And stakeholder capitalism, at least explained from an investor's perspective, is the reason why ESG and sustainable finance is so hot right now, right? Because if you're using frameworks like ESG, environmental, social, and governance, you're ultimately trying to ask yourself, am I taking care of my whole value chain? My employees, my customers, and my suppliers across the whole value chain. Whether or not you're operating a business or whether you're looking to make an investment, you've got to factor the stakeholder in the view, okay? But even stakeholder capitalism has itself had a paradigm shift, where it's not enough just to make sure that they're okay, that you have to contribute to the solutions. In this two existential crises, from the climate crisis to the pandemic, we have a record year in the stock markets. There is definitely a fracture of our financial system, i.e. capitalism. ESG is really a framework that really started almost 2.5 decades ago. Okay, we've been investing in this space for 15 years. But it's interesting to see that what started off from disclosure and risk. That means, where were my waste problems? Did I have policies in place? Am I paying my staff correctly? Am I passing the value down to suppliers? All of that started from risk. But interestingly enough, in the last 2 years, when investors were starting to deploy with that same framework, they look at their portfolio and said, oh wow, in a COVID environment, they've not only mitigated risk, they've actually outperformed. And that's really one of the central drivers behind sustainable finance, because in the past, whilst we can pitch the morality of doing the investment, the end product, which is profit and purpose, is actually mutually reinforcing. And that's where I think it's very, very interesting as a shift of the mindset and the application of finance. I think many of you here would have seen the spectrum, right? You've got the extreme profit maximization one end, extreme traditional philanthropy the other end, but it's really the stuff in the middle which is super exciting, broadly called sustainable finance. And I think I just wanted to sort of put it out there in a help to demystify this sort of alphabet soup of acronyms, right? That we generally use the simple ABCs, right? Different investors essentially are looking in terms of motivations, either avoiding the harm, okay? They may not invest in electric, but they don't want to invest in diesel, okay? So they're avoiding the harm, that's the A. B, they're benefiting stakeholders, so they're using very, very powerful frameworks like ESG to understand that all stakeholders are benefiting. And people like me and my firm, we are always about the C, which is contributing to the solution. So it's not good enough to don't invest in oil guzzlers, but I'm going to invest in the leading technologies of the most efficient energy vehicles of the future, including flying cars. Freshfields, I think, from a governance perspective, was one of the law firms that actually published a really important report to suggest that as part of fiduciary duty, right, we all know that you have oversight governance, and that oversight and governance needs to link to strategy. In the world that we face today, whether it's the climate crisis, rising inequality, poverty, environmental degradation, and so forth, how can you as the governance body not consider these risks and opportunities? It just would not be consistent with a fiduciary duty to maximize value. What keeps me up at night is that when this topic has been so hot, there is really a lack of authenticity. Okay. And in the same way that on the investor side, we have these terms called, as many of you have heard, impact washing, green washing, and most recently, rainbow washing. Rainbow washing is all these presentations I see with all the SDGs, the colorful SDGs. But I go, oh, that's really interesting. You like SDG number 3, that's on healthcare. What are you focusing on? Is it 3.1 in maternal health or child health? When you have the optionality to do something, not everyone does it. But when you have the imperative to do something, you no longer have the choice, that's when it becomes time critical. And I think in the social sector, some parts are moving faster than others. I don't think anyone here can deny that given the impetus of the pandemic and the climate crisis, there's no urgency. So when choices slim down and it becomes an imperative, you have to act. There is no planet B. And I think when it comes to value, I've realized, at least with capitalism, morality has never been the prime mover of mobilizing capital. Opportunity has. And why I alluded to the earlier point about what's growing sustainable finance is quite apart from what they morally feel. It's because there's opportunity there. Opportunity in some cases that generates strong returns. So that's the second reason why I feel that particularly with institutional investors, money will have to go there because there's strong, scalable solutions that can really not compromise on the returns. Does it mean that all of them are do-gooders? Probably not. But does it still help to solve the solution? Absolutely. And when you look at the demographics in Asia, you have some really positive tailwinds. Largest accumulation of wealth with the biggest developmental challenges in the same place.